Perfect. So I'm live everywhere. If we can get the comments rolling, we should begin. There's a comment. There's a message by Mr. Raju Kumar. Oh, nice. YouTube AI chapters generator. Hi Nishant, I made a video showing how I list YouTube topic with their timestamp. Oh, that's incredible. That's very nice. So this particular video can be used by people for the timestamping thing. That's great. Can anybody hear me? I see people rolling in. If you could hear me, say something so we would begin. It's 8:08 and we will need to begin, right? We'll need to begin, folks. Quickly. Hi, good morning, says Mr. Raju Kumar. Good morning, Mr. Kumar. I just read your message. You got a brilliant video there of how you generate subtitles using AI, the chapter marker. That's brilliant. And you made a video on it. You know, I just realized that YouTube has a section of community, apparently, where the viewers can also post things. And that's amazing, right? If viewers can also post things. I was just looking for something like that. And it exists already on YouTube. So we could post that video on the channel itself and then everybody can look it up, right? And do that. If you can hear me, if I'm audible, can we begin? It's 8 or 9. If you can hear me, please let me know. Yes, says Miss Ridhima Agrawal. Hi, good morning, Miss Agrawal. So we should begin, right? Perfect. Sounds good. All right. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, we got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition. The sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a copper mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like hot water with some black pepper in it. And here we go. My God, that was beautiful. Let's do it again. Sublime. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together. And that's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. So there's news about American Eagle. But before we start the news, we should talk about Ether stock. Because last night, it went up 10% again. So right now, Ether is worth 2.4 to 2.5 billion dollars. And Ola is worth about 2.8 billion dollars. So another 20% up, and Ether will actually overtake Ola in market cap, given Ola's market cap stays static. So Ola doesn't have any room to grow because of its audit mismatches and so on and so forth, governance lapses. So ideally, Ola should not be going up. But whatever happens, it's just 20% is the delta between Ether and Ola. Ether, by the way, right now is pretty well valued, let's say, or many people will call it overvalued because its price to sales is hovering at 8.6 right now, right? Which is almost close to iShares, Royal Enfield's price to sales of 8.9. And Royal Enfield is the most profitable bike company, two-wheeler company in the world, right? And Ather is barely profitable. It's not profitable actually. At the net level, it's still negative, right? But Ather is the future EV story and so on and so on. So Ather has room to grow. But the point is, from $5 billion, Ola has come to 2.8, and from $700 million, Ather has come to 2.5. And in any moment now, Ather could overtake Ola in market cap. Now, this play is slightly more complicated than that, because if you look at the bigger companies in the fray, that is TVS, Bajaj, Hero, right? Hero is falling apart. Hero doesn't have much to show for, right? Its Veda product not going anywhere really. But Hero is the 40% shareholder of Ather. So Hero is incentivized enough, right? It's the largest stakeholder of Ather. So Hero is incentivized enough to actually back Ather as far as its distribution channel is also considered. Once that happens, if that happens, let's say once will be too confident. If that happens, Ether could actually be looking at going to the big league. And then, everything will have to be refreshed as far as Ether is considered. But for now, uh, just 2 months ago, barely 2 months, it's been 40 days. When did we talk about Ether stock first, right? Maybe 40 days. In a month, if you would have listened to that, it would have been 1.7x, right? 1.7 for now. So just maybe in 2 months, you might be able to double your money with that particular analysis. That's how valuable it is to look into the future, right? That is how valuable it is to look into the future. With that out of the way, let's begin with American Eagle. So American Eagle is a clothing company, US based clothing company. It wasn't doing very well. It was basically, a cold store kind of a company. Nobody was really looking at it. But then they came up with the idea of casting somebody called Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney is an actor based out of US. She's supposed to be a very good looking person. She's very, quintessential beauty, so to speak, the blonde beauty. Now, Sydney Sweeney and American Eagle tied up with their for an ad campaign, with the headline which said, "Sydney Sweeney has great genes." Okay. Now, there was a pretty loud and proud kind of an advertisement where a pretty blonde was, promoting a product and saying something like Sydney Sweeney has great genes. Now, that particular brand campaign got a serious backlash, right, from the left, because left is very anti, the whole white pride, let's say, so they didn't take it positively, and they said that it's racially bigoted, the ad which says Sydney Sweeney has great genes, right? But the times have changed, man. The wokeism era of wokeism is out, right? And as it went out, American Eagle doubled down on their campaign. They said, "We don't have anything to do with race. We're just selling good genes. And screw you guys. And Sydney Sweeney has indeed got great genes." So, for the very long time, these people had been going away from the usual, let's say, conventional beauty standards, and the whole cross dressing movement, the whole trans movement was really blurring the whole line, right? It was a very complicated mess. If you look at Calvin Klein's ads with, let's say, Mark Wahlberg, and, that's a pretty guy, pretty girl, conventionally pretty guy, conventionally pretty girl, white, blonde people, in an ad campaign. And then Calvin Klein did an ad campaign with some sort of trans people, right? And that was a pretty edgy thing for them. But the conventional conservative guys, they didn't appreciate that kind of stuff a lot, right? But that was the era of wokeism. Now, post 2024, when wokeism and DEI essentially got killed, got steamrolled by the Trump movement, plus size, that's what I'm talking about, Mr. Tiwari. So, when that movement got steamrolled, the American Eagle guys saw it as an opportunity to do this, right? And when they did that, the stock went up 38%, right? In a day. It was probably one of the highest intraday movements for a stock. And this particular ad campaign is sort of, uh, indicative of how the movement has totally reversed. So it's back, it's back in fashion to be conventionally pretty, let's say, or to not bend to the woke ideals, of beauty standards and so on and so on. So that's pretty interesting. It got this. This is again, a signal about how political will impacts business, right? Just a year ago, this would have been unforgivable. That company would have been cancelled, and they would have been banished from American decent society, right? For even thinking about this ad campaign. If they would have thought of this ad campaign, it would have been rejected in the idea room itself, right? Because it wasn't politically correct. But now politics change, the company's ad campaigns change. The company's ad campaigns change, people's preferences change. So all business decisions, or let's say all business outcomes, are the result of the political will. So once again, it proves that we've been saying that for a very, very long time, right? We're gonna come to that in the Indian context as well. It's very important. Speaking of Indian context, something very related to India is Nepal, and we talked about how Nepalese political revolution essentially overthrew the government. They burned the parliament, man. And the insinuation I made yesterday is pretty much true. So I said that this is not an organic protest. No protest is organic. It's all paid for. All of these protests essentially from Black Lives Matters to everything we have in India. There's no semblance of any organic protest unless it's a grassroots movement, right? So something similar happened in Bangladesh where Madam Sheikh Hasina's government was toppled. Why it was toppled? Because she wasn't kowtowing to US, right? And she got thrown out. Apparently, this is what happened in Nepal as well. So the person who's being pitched in as the next leader is somebody called Mr. Bhalendra Singh, right? And he is being covered by the Time magazine as one of the most upcoming influential leaders. He also met DC in 2024. So he's essentially an American stooge. So it was CIA working overtime to overthrow the Nepalese government. Now, why would they do that, and how could they do that? They outmuscled China there. They outmuscled China there, and China, because the Oli government was totally pro-China. It was a CCP. It was a communist government in every way, right? And they basically outmuscled. So that's that. A question comes from Mr. Tiwari. Can I ask why no student protests are organic? It's not about student protest, Mr. Tiwari. It's basically about the nature of protests and how they've been uncovered as, properly funded vehicles by special interest groups. So if you look at Black Lives Matters, that's where it originated, right? The first Trump government and the first Trump movement, against Trump. So not my president was the first protest. And then you had Black Lives Matters. And then you investigated Black Lives Matters and you found out that it was funded by a lot of politically driven organizations. It was funded by NGOs which essentially directly, indirectly were related to the political opposition, right? And then it was funded by something like a CIA kind of an apparatus. And this is now no more a conspiracy theory. It was pretty, out there. Now then you looked at a lot of protests which happened in Bangladesh, right? Now Bangladesh was a Madam Sheikh Hasina government, not very pro-US, pretty pro-India. Student protests happened, all of a sudden, and they've inflamed to such an extent that the entire government was literally thrown away, right? She had to literally airlift get airlifted to India, right? That was one student protest. Then the second student protest was what happened with Nepal. Again, an entire government, a parliament getting burned and the government getting thrown away. Now, you can call it coincidence, right? That, oh, so many student protests are happening and so many governments are getting overthrown. And then, after those governments are getting overthrown, they're getting replaced by stooges of United States, right? Like Mohammed Yunus, a Nobel laureate, so to speak, is a stooge of the US Democrat administration. He's like the Bill Clinton camp guy, right? So that affects a lot of things, and these things are not organic. Of course, no student burns their own parliament, right? Then happened a lot. So it's not just Nepal and Bangladesh. A lot of such things happened across the world, and then people figured out, oh, it was the US deep state, and so to speak. So anyway, a lot of things are gonna change now, and they can go in either direction. So people are saying that this could be good for India because Oli was bad for India, but you never know. You never know. Whatever happens, you'll have to see where it goes, because if US is involved, it could be like a Bangladesh kind of a situation, and that's no good news for India, right? Anyway, moving on. For Indian businesses, why we are talking about this is we're not interested in politics, but geopolitics affects a lot of business. We talked about how Nepal was essentially taking China's steel and exporting it to US. You realize that? We talked about that. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember how we said Nepal was essentially growing as a steel exporter to India, and we thought, oh, how's that happening? And then they checked and they found out that, oh, it's not Nepal, it's Chinese steel coming in from Nepal. So those kinds of things affect everything that happen in the world of money, the world of business, which we are very concerned with. Moving on. At 17, iPhone debuts India's largest factory. So iPhone, the latest model, 17, is going to be made in India in all factories. Women-led Foxconn facility in Bangalore and others rolling out supply for the world. So smartphone manufacturing, which began in 2017, really shaping up well for India. Even though the value addition is not that great, 23%, right? But even as an assembling play, even as some core components getting made in India, it's very, very good news for the Indian ecosystem, the manufacturing ecosystem, that it's gonna be made in India for the world, the iPhone 17 play, right? Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav sir's target was to actually take it up to 38%. That is when India is gonna match China as far as smartphone component value addition is considered. Smartphone manufacturing value addition is considered. Right now, India is more of a trade operator, right? We package things, we import everything, we assemble in India, and so on and so forth. Now we're trying to go up the chain, where we start making components, we start making glass, we start making some sort of chips, and so on and so forth. Speaking of chips and making of chips, I'm talking about the electronics chips, of course, not the edible chips. The plan to make them in Assam has come up with a very strange challenge, that Assam, where the unit is getting set up, right, there are a lot of elephants in that play, right? And now that Jagi Road, Morigaon district, Morigaon district has a lot of elephants. So what happens with elephants is when they start moving, right, it leads to micro vibrations as far as the facilities are considered. Now, if there's a micro vibration, you cannot make something of extreme precision as a chip, right? Because these things are measured in nanometers, whatever they're trying to do there. So the thumping of the elephants is coming in the way. So they're trying to make a wall which is an elephant-proof wall, way beyond the facilities parameters, so that particular play can be fixed. Also, it's a wildlife heavy area in Assam. So what they're trying is managing snakes as well. So it's a very interesting conundrum that 27,000 crore plant in Assam, essentially part of India's 76,000 crore chip mission, is facing an elephant problem. Can we please address the elephant in the room? right? Very interesting, very interesting, and a lot of fun. Moving on, 39,000 crore carbon storage plan in the offering. The government is essentially preparing a carbon capture, utilization, and storage program that would likely cost 39,000 crores approximately, commit a little half over the total outlay. So, what they're trying to do is basically cement, thermal power makes a lot of emissions, right? Some in million tons per A. In 2030, thermal power is expected to make 1200 MTPA. Cement is the second one, 450. And what they're trying to do is doing some sort of carbon capture activity here in the thermal, in steel, in cement, in oil and gas, hydrogen, coal gasification, and so on and so forth, right? And they're marking 40,000 crores for this particular play, 39,000 crores, actually 38,900. I am like rounding off hundreds of crores like it's pocket change for me. But maybe it becomes one day. Moving on, this particular play is in line with what India is trying to do as far as the EU deal is considered. So EU deal has CBAM kind of a clause where it's carbon based something something, where EU is essentially looking at India's exports from an emission perspective, everything from farm produce to everything they want it to be emission free, so to speak. India has been debating that. They've been saying that this is just protectionism disguised as environmentalism, but India is actually trying to position itself in a nice way so that can be done. Moving on, 39,000 crores parked for that. Consolidation round 2 seen ahead of PSBs. Public sector banks are looking at consolidation. Government is moving. Government has a pretty nice sounding thing for it. It's called PSB Manthan. So PSB Manthan is looking at making a bigger public sector banks which have better capacities. So that's something. In the meanwhile, the rate transfers are not happening as far as the MFIs are considered, microfinance entities. What that means is central bank cut the rate. Right now, that rate cut needs to be transmitted to through the banks to people, right? But it's not happening as far as the microfinance play is considered because of asset quality issues and loans tied to internal cost of fund gauges. So it's going to take some time for banking to essentially translate the loan costs, or let's say translate the rate cut to customers, at least in the microfinance play. Otherwise, in the retail sector, in the MSME sector, it's coming down, and it's coming down quickly. But in the microfinance sector, it's a bit of an issue. Moving on. Cyrus Mistri's sons joined strategic SP group to him. Shapoorji Pallonji group is going through some trouble. It's going through some debt restructuring, as you might know. It's long-term debts. So Shapoorji Pallonji group is heavily indebted, and it has all of its Tata stake pledged to cover its debt. Now it's trying to refinance its debts, which is approaching maturity, by taking new debts. And the rates at which it's taking those debts is just phenomenal. It's just too high. That means that the group is in real stress, and the next generation is going to take all that mess. Moving on. Rapido rapidly races to top, keeps Uber on toes, gets nearly half of share of overall ride-hailing market. So in 2016-17, I had made a prediction which said that the cab hailing market won't work. Okay. Now I had said that the cab hailing market won't work, despite it being at the peak of the whole thing, right? So these people were just flying all guns blazing, right? They had raised a lot of money. In fact, VCs in India were faking US accent, like, I don't own a car anymore. It's so great. I don't own a car anymore. And I'm like, you don't own a car anymore. That doesn't sound like a good deal, right? And they went as far as faking American accent to say that Uber is the disruption and it's gonna work well. And I said it's not gonna work well. There's no chance that Uber works well in India. or Ola works well in India. And they said, why? And I said, because at the time in 2016-17, India's per capita income was about $1,800, right? 18, $1,900, $2,000. Right now it's 2,800. And I said that how much is 1,800, $2,000? At that time, a rupee was approximately 70 bucks. So 2000 was 1.5 lakh rupees, 1.4 lakh rupees. I said that's the per capita income of the country. How many cab rides do you think an average Akash making 1.5 lakh rupees a month, a year can take, right? The market has no depth, and right now they are incentivizing both sides of the marketplace. So they're discounting the users, they're giving discounts to the users, and they're giving incentives to the drivers, right? And once that goes away, it's just gonna be, it's all gonna crash like it never happened, right? And they laughed at me, man. They thought I was, I don't know, I couldn't read their minds, what they thought, but they literally laughed at me. And the argument which they had was that, hey, these venture capital firms, they have all the analysts there are. They have all the greatest consultants on their payroll. The best IIT, IIM guys, they have everybody. Who the hell are you coming from Maharaja Agrasen Institute of Technology, building a manpower outsourcing firm with like 1.5 crore in revenues, talking such big things, right? And at that moment, I knew that these people were idiots, right? Because the line of argument which relies on authority bias, that hey, you know something that these guys, you don't know something that these guys do. Why? Because they're smart, they come from pedigree, they're rich, right? And you must know, they must know something that you don't. And just basis that, I'll go with them. That was the mainstream line of argument, that these people investing billions of dollars must know something that you know. यार investors ने इतने पैसे लगाए हैं, उनको तो पता होगा ना. That was the core line of argument. And at that point I knew that no matter how much money these people raise, they're all idiots, right? Because it's just life. That's how life works. Authority bias is no fundamental for debates, right? For arguing anything or even thinking. You're basically outsourcing your thinking when you're going to authority bias. And that's exactly what happened. So the incentives sort of started getting tapered out, right? By 2021, 2022. And Ola, essentially, everybody started talking about how pathetic the user experience is. People started talking about cab cancellations because drivers, when the incentives went out for drivers weren't incentivized to, take on the rides. So they just cancelled rides. They just started taking rides on the side. They started cutting Uber and Ola off and so on and so forth. All sorts of hell got unleashed with Uber and Ola stopping the stopping the artificial model, right? And then Blue Smart came along and it started taking off the market, and everybody saw that, oh, this is and that's exactly what I said. It's going to be a premium offering. There's some people who are going to take cabs, very few people, just like Meru existed. When Meru at its peak before Ola and Uber was a 450 crore company, right? So that's the market. It's might just ride as like 10-12% per annum, but that's the market, right? Other than that, average Akash won't take a cab. That was the thesis, and that came to be true, right? Now, Blue Smart got screwed because of whatever reasons, but the next player which essentially came forward and ruined everything for them was Rapido. And what did Rapido sell? Rapido sold two-wheelers, right? And that's exactly what Indians can afford. So even the rich Indians, so to speak, making 20 lakh rupees, right? They started taking bikes instead of the cabs, because cabs are just too expensive, man, right? Who will, and when would cabs make money? When they're like priced twice as they're currently priced. Like Blue Smart's pricing, the original prices, Meru's pricing, that's when cabs start making money, right? And middle class, they had all sorts of wrong notions about middle class. So, and then actually I met that guy in a recent event, the same guy. And I I'm a bit of an asshole. So I went to him and said, "Hey man, I met you uh, like in 2016-17, and you said that you don't own a car anymore. How's that working out for you? I mean, do you still own a car? Do you still not own a car, or have you actually bought a car?" And he was clearly not happy with my uh, you know sarcasm. But not everybody has a sense of humor, right? Don't blame me. Mr. Bhandekar says Rapido sustained because they pivoted the business model. Yeah, a lot of people will say that Rapido is sustaining because they have a subscription model, but that's not the reason why Rapido clicked. Rapido hasn't clicked because of subscription model in cars. That's right now, that's current. Rapido has clicked because it focused on two-wheelers. Okay, so I'm saying that even the current model of this subscription play where they give like 120 rupees daily subscription to drivers, and then they can run infinite rides. Even that, you can get more cab rides, but it won't be that green for these companies. So Rapido is really burning a lot of money in four-wheelers, but let's see how that pans out. Namma Yatri is an open source kind of a deal, right? ONDC play. That's great. That's great. So Namma Yatri is all about autos. That's awesome. What these people did was they discounted the cars so much that they were cheaper than autos. In fact, they started giving free rides to people, right? And no more. Moving on. So yeah, I hope I'm not missing out on anything. It has cabs too now, but it began as the auto play, and now it has tried to run subscription based cabs, so drivers can buy a subscription instead of paying like 20-30% of ride revenue as cut. Now the point is that just because you have subscription doesn't make your business green. It's just cutting your markup, right? So let's say if a guy did 10 to 12 cab rides in a day, right? And average of those cab rides was like $200. Okay, just saying, just because we are doing the math right now. So 30% of $200 is $60. So in a day, Uber, Ola made like $600 approximately, right? Now they're gonna make 120 to 140 bucks. How does that make the business green? How does that make the business green? Does it like lead to more business? You're expecting more cab rides because this is gonna happen? No. And when I met Mr. Bhavish Agrawal back in 2017, I guess it was 16-17, he said it's a supply constrained market. Cab rides have an infinite demand. And I'm like, this guy is next level, man. This guy is next level. But he is next level in a way, because he's been able to raise money, so much money. 3 very big companies. Huge. Moving on. Bain has dropped out of the Whirlpool acquisition plan. So Whirlpool was trying to sell its India unit because it's not doing well, right? So it had a lot of debt and it made losses, and it had to pay off that debt. So it was looking at stake sales of Indian unit essentially to pay for that, right? So earlier a lot of people were in the fray because Whirlpool has some sort of brand equity in the Indian market. So Havells, Reliance, a lot of people were looking at that brand, but Bain was at the top. Now Bain has also dropped out because of valuation concerns. Whirlpool wanted some particular valuation. What is the valuation that? Yeah, it was targeting 550 to 600 million from 31% stake, which essentially means that it was looking at like 1.8 or $2 billion valuation roughly. Bain wasn't happy with that valuation, right? Whirlpool did a revenue of about $1 billion, 7,400, with a net profit of 303 crores, 13 crores. So essentially it was looking at a multiple of 2.5, but even that was very high. And Bain has dropped out. EQT, another private equity player, is still in the fray. So let's say Whirlpool is able to sell its stake and pay its debt using the Indian entity. If it's not being able to sell its share, if it's not able to do that, Whirlpool will keep the share, run the business, and then sell later, and then think about how it will pay that debt, right? So that bit is going on. Moving on. Basically, the problem with Whirlpool's business is that the money is in the premium market and it's stuck in the non-premium zone, which makes the business unattractive. That's the play, right? Very interesting though. Maybe if Whirlpool holds on to its business for a couple of quarters, and shows better earnings and better than expected earnings and uh, margins, right? It could actually have. Uh, the biggest question is, why would a company like Whirlpool, which has good brand equity, sell right now? I mean, I get the global concerns, but India is a good market. It's a big market, right? And I'm sure the pocket is tight. You have debts to pay and so on and so forth. But you could keep it on, right? I have a disagreement on a cab business. It's going to sustain a business model to pivot to sustain. Food delivery will also pivot. The same subscription model will come into play. That doesn't matter. It doesn't make the business green, right? You were making $100 earlier. You're gonna make $30 now. Doesn't make the business green, and doesn't justify the money that was invested. That's the play. Of course, cab aggregation, good business, so great, like good job for you guys, kudos, right? But did it warrant like 30,000 crores in burn in all this while, right? 40,000 crores in investment, 40 to 50,000 crores in investment. Would the enterprise value of these companies justify that kind of an investment? No, that's the play. Of course, sometimes sooner or later, it's gonna find a way to make more than it spends, but it doesn't matter, right? It was a shitty investment. That's the matter. That's what I want to say. And it destroyed the market also, right? Because it brought a lot of people into cabs. A lot of people from villages started taking debt to buy cabs. They bought cabs on loan and then they got screwed, right? Because the cabs stopped paying like before, right? And then they got trapped essentially. So they got trapped into buying cars and selling in the cab market. Going into the cab market and then finding out that it was just a bubble. Mr. Bandekar says IPOs will justify everything. Not true. Not true. Moving on. Geopolitics is the latest subject at top B schools now. So top B schools are teaching geopolitics to kids. What's an agenda? Discussions around global issues like trade conflicts, tariffs, ESG norms, and so on. Who's doing it? I am Calcutta, I am Indore, XLRI, MDI Gurgaon, ISB, and so on. There's something called VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, as a part of VUCA. So that's why we do it here, right? Thinkers Frequency. So we are way ahead. I guess these guys are listening to Thinkers Frequency as well. Who knows that amongst the 15 people that listen to us every day, one of them must be like the curriculum guy at some management institute. It's like, yeah, we should do that, man. All business outcomes are the result of political will. That sounds great. Let's teach kids geopolitics. Moving on. India's 5G user base has hit 365 million. Great numbers. Despite tariff increases, India's combined wireless and wired subscriber base at 1.22 billion, up from 1.2 billion a year before. Wireless base has held steady, 1.172 billion. The wired base has grown. So 5G user achieves 35% penetration within 3 years of tech rollout. That's great news. Vodafone challenges, it's gotten a 9.4 crore AGR demand, right? Adjusted gross revenue demand. It's going to the court. While it bleeds money, lawyers are going to make money, as always. Moving on. A lot of real estate market, office real estate market really growing up. Return to workforce biz growth drives India office market. 85% domestic firms plan to expand office portfolio in the next 2 years. 94% companies want employees in office at least 3 days a week. 52 firms mandate full return to office. Uh, you know, 35 to 40% of annual office absorption driven by GCCs. So GCCs, Global Capability Centers, they are really looking up in India. They're going up. They're hurting the IT while they're going up, but they're going up. There's no doubt about that. And they're also heating up the real estate market. And you know what the government is trying to do? It's trying to convince them to move away from the metropolitans, because even this particular play, this news, right, it's focused on metros, unfortunately, right? And that the government is trying its best to move them away from metros. They're saying just target tier 2, tier 3 players, cities, because if they can get this business, the country will change. Like, the country will just become very, very beautiful. Let's say if small cities start getting big GCCs, because one big office gets set up in a small city, everything changes for that small city, right? And it also leads to better investment for these people, because real estate costs are much lower in small cities. So it makes for a good business case. But somehow these companies still stick to the major hubs, so to speak. Moving on. Reform said to boost consumption won't hit fiscal numbers, says Moody's. But before Moody's, I said that. Everybody said that. So no thanks to Moody's. Fertilizer biz faces income tax credit pileup despite revision. So we've talked about how GST revision has inadvertently hurt a few companies because of the income tax situation is considered, GST situation. So inverted duty. So they are paying more duties or more GST on the raw material, and then the thing that's going out, the final product, has no GST. So their money is getting stuck. The government is subsidizing them, and that's loading that up as like an income tax credit tool. And that's basically going to help. So the government is trying to sort out their income tax problem, IT income tax credit problem, because that's hurting their working capital. So fertilizer business getting hurt as far as the working capital play is considered. The persistent flaw in the tax system has logged close to 3,500 crore in working capital for just a few large fertilizer makers. So that's that. BBD and Amazon sale are below par. Oh, it's not begun yet. So that's early sales. Actual sales happen in the festive season. That's just a stock clearing sale to actually move forward. So it's called deferred purchases. We've talked about this, Mr. Bhandiga. More patients can access key drugs after tax cuts. Of course, drugs are becoming cheaper. 5% GST, in some cases nil GST, so on and so forth. Insurance players to seek clarity on credit life policies. So individual insurance has become GST free, right? But group insurance bought by an individual is still taxed. So the companies want some sort of clarity as far as that play is considered. That's why reforms are so hard. Festive season to see 5,400 crore of extra ad spend. Of course, since everything becomes cheaper, right? And so cheap, like cars become 2 lakhs, 1.5 lakhs cheaper, 10 lakh car going like 15% low. It's great. It's amazing, right? So that's what's going to happen. CBIC's meeting trade bodies on smooth rollout on GST. That's okay. Mahindra is really going forward with the car discount play. No surprise there to anybody, least of all the viewers of Thinkers Frequency. Okay. Government plans SOB's local sourcing mandate to push chip demand, lining up incentives for developing chips for 25 sectors under updated DLI scheme. So we've already talked about PLI scheme, performance linked incentive scheme, right? Where not performance, production linked. I went in HR mode. Production linked incentive scheme, so that the number of things you produce, you're gonna get. It's FAME is an example of the EV, right? Then there was an ELI scheme. ELI scheme is employee linked incentive scheme. So the number of people you hire, you're gonna get some SOP. Now there is something called a design-led incentive scheme. So what it means is it design chips here, localize manufacturing, and then that particular chips get used in many sectors like TVs, like washing machines, like all sorts of consumer electronics, heavy, right? And that is what the government is lining up to do, because the semiconductor mission needs a lot of localization of demand, right? You cannot just expect that, oh, we gotta get a contract from somewhere outside the country and then we invest all this money and we keep importing from where we are importing because that's convenient, right? We don't want to rock the boat, but we're just gonna have exports going on. No. So the government wants some domestic utilization of chips is considered. So products being eyed by center include energy meters, refrigerators, telecom equipment, and devices using IoT sensors. As a first step, this will give them the expertise and industrial scale to advance onto more advanced electronics. Firms have been told that research and development should be geared towards designing and production of chipsets used across a range of consumer items. So 23 chip design products under 1000 crore DLI scheme launched in December 2021. So it's one of the moves again to localize the use, right, as a part of Indian semiconductor mission, which is gonna have its reboot in the Indian Semiconductor Mission 2.0. I hope I'm not missing out anything. The government has so far sanctioned 23 chip design projects, 1000 crore. Yeah. Strict local sourcing. The government is saying you got to source local, otherwise you're gonna get screwed. Speaking of strict local sourcing, Mr. Piyush Goyal has said something really interesting. Again, a confirmation of the thesis that we talk about, that every business outcome, most business outcomes are the result of political will. So he said to his steel manufacturers, to Indian steel manufacturers, that you should be ashamed of yourself, man. Because when it came to protecting the Indian steel duty, Indian steel products, you wanted duties. But when it came to supporting your own suppliers, like the pet coke suppliers, you took the slightest chance to import that material to save a few dollars, right? So in his words, now this is extraordinary. This is extraordinary. As a policy play, this is extraordinary. So listen to this very carefully, okay? Goyal slammed the domestic industry, saying that it often rushes to import cheaper material at slightest opportunity, quote unquote, instead of supporting domestic companies. He said, the spirit of supporting each other must be inculcated across value chain, starting with steel industry. Now here comes the quote, which is the master. Perhaps you deserved the safeguard duty a few months before it was finally imposed. But when the met coke industry needed protection, I didn't get support from the steel sector. For the sake of saving a few dollars, you chose to import met coke and brought the domestic industry to its knees and nearly killed it. Once there are no domestic suppliers left, you will be at the mercy of foreign companies who could charge you an arm and a leg and you'll have to pay it. So well said. Don't you think? Don't you think it's so well said? Indian corporates have a very bad reputation across the world, so they don't believe in the story. They don't really have, like forward thinking bone, because when you look at Indian corporates, the biggest problem of the government is what? The lacking private capex, right? So they just like to sit on the money. These people just like to sit on the money and just deal in commodities, keep business as usual. They would never want to invest. If given a chance, they'll just store the money and just watch it multiply and invest only if it's absolutely necessary. It becomes a threat to their business. That's when these people look at investments, right? So the government's biggest complaint with the private capex industry, as far as the economy is considered, is private capex. So everybody is saying, hey, the demand is going to pick up. The demand is going to pick up. Please don't wait and watch, invest, right? Right now, all the private capex which is happening through refineries and all of these, oil guys. That's not going to help, right? These people will need to step up and they don't step up. And that's just one facet of the story. The other facet is that even uh, to support their vertical integration, they will just trade off their vendors for like a couple of bucks, right? And start taking money from China in all sorts of ways and screw that vendor and then cry that, oh, we don't have anything, China has taken everything. Because then, where it, when the competition dies at home, then as Mr. Goyal said, they can charge you an arm and leg and you'll have to pay it. So Indian corporates have a very bad reputation. I hope it changes. That's why it's we are very lucky to have companies like Adani who've gone out of the way to actually go into private capex, right? And we should be very thankful for entrepreneurs like Sanjeev Bikhchandani sir and Nitin Kamath sir and now Girish Matra Bhumam sir and everybody, even Bansals from Flipkart, because they didn't just collect the money and sit on it, right? Like typical conventional Indian businessmen. They actually paid it forward, supported startups, supported businesses, ushered a new era of entrepreneurship and investments and activity, which helped the company in a lot of ways, right? So it's very important. Moving on. Karnataka accounts for nearly half of India's mid-market GCCs. That's good news. ED files fresh PMLA against Anil Ambani company. Mr. Anil Ambani in a lot of trouble. SBI marked its loan to fraud, and then since then, everything is screwed. Even though Reliance Infra is really picked up, it's a comeback story. But now he's saying that these cases are from 10 years ago. Why are they bringing it up right now? I thought he was like the government wanted to favor him. Why is this happening? It's very strange. Moving on. August capex dips for key CPSEs, 4 government entities. Public capex will sort of dry down a little right now. You know why, right? Because the government has implemented the GST reform. It implemented the personal income tax reform. It's going to hurt the exchequer. This is going to limit the government's ability to actually make investments. So public capex will see a bit of a drawdown in the next couple of quarters, I think, right? So that's what's happening. That's what we expected. Railway board key spenders, NHAI, NTPC, but it's gonna be looking a bit low. FY25. 99% of railways have been electrified, which is amazing. Assam, Rajasthan, Karnataka remain the last frontiers of electrification. So 99 point some percentages. Let me tell you the exact percentage. 99.1% of railways have been electrified. Infosys is doing a buyback. Could be good news for investors. SEBI must give reasons in 3 weeks. So Jane Street case is on. SAT has directed SEBI to respond within 3 weeks. So you remember the Jane Street case, right? We talked about it in depth. We said like Jane Street, they essentially gamed the market, and they gamed the market in a very, very bad way. They gamed the market in a way where it enabled them to like book $4 billion in profit in 2 years, which is extraordinary. Nobody makes that kind of money. Nobody makes that kind of money. So they made that amount of money. But the problem is that they had like 2 Indian entities and 2 offshore entities. So all the profits they booked were part of the offshore entities, and the local entities just made losses, right? So it became a bit of a problem. The government stepped in, SEBI stepped in. It took all the data and found out that they were just placing calls, then selling buying puts, selling calls, and then at the end of the day, within Nifty expiry, they essentially built up the market, brought the market everybody, and then directly sold, and then also shorted. So when they sold their calls, they placed new shorts, so they had like a double growing kind of an investment, and everybody lost because of them. And they did that for 18 sessions, the Nifty expiry days, banking Nifty, and all the money they made was in the offshore entities. So there was a serious case, but earlier they were like cooperating, and now they're getting back at SEBI. They're saying that, hey, you took all our data from NSE, right? NSE, right? What did it show? And why didn't you show that data to us? That means that you looked at our data and there was nothing wrong, right? If there was nothing wrong, you're gonna get screwed. So they're fighting SEBI. Moving on. urban companies IPOs going out, right? 18 September is when it goes out, right? 18 September is when the company goes public. Let's see what happens. I'm obviously very bullish on urban company, as I've told you. Let's see how that pans out. A lot of things that people are not pricing in. The company has no peer, man. No peer, right? Moving on. Slower transmission risk meter keep MFI borrowing costs high. We've talked about this. Lenders turn selective, seek to protect margins with asset issues at MFI. We've talked about that. Yeah. There's a lot of serious, case as far as the Kapoor family is considered. Mr. Sanjay Kapoor, who died playing polo. Was he playing polo? He was playing polo, right? And then some bee got into his mouth and stuff like, and he died because of a heart complication. While that was happening, it was terrible. Rest in peace. So there's a very serious case as far as his family estate is considered, right? Now that particular bit is on. Karishma Kapoor's children moved Delhi High Court seeking share in late Sanjay Kapoor's assets. So what's happening is everybody in his family is actually going for his money, which is so weird to see. But that's what's happening. So they have essentially made his mother sign a few documents years ago, and now the mother, the daughter, the wife, everybody have started like piling on, and it's become a family, weird operation. Weird operation. Moving on. European car makers face tariffs, price war, parties over in China. So, European car makers are not being able to sell in China anymore. Now, we discussed this. We've discussed how China's EV play has literally screwed everybody. Not just European car makers, but also American car makers. Also Tesla, right? Tesla's sales in Europe have been declining for 8 months straight, right? And that's become a big problem for Tesla. But Tesla is not alone. European car makers are also screwed. And we talked about this. So all of these people, thanks to the McKinsey types, what they did was they started offshoring their manufacturing, right? Somebody gave them an idea that, hey, you should offshore. And then you could go up the value chain. You could design. Forget about the factories, right? You don't want these low paying jobs. So just transfer the factories to China. Make whatever you make, at cost savings and so on and so forth. And then nobody told them that, hey, if China starts manufacturing, don't you think they will be able to move up the chain as well? Right? Like, moving up the chain is not our God-given right? Everybody can move up the chain. So why do you think Chinese won't move up the chain? Nobody asked these questions, right? So McKinsey types ruined America, ruined the West by going heavy on offshoring, especially in China, majorly in China. And China took everything, protected its markets in all sorts of ways. Nobody could compete in China fairly. And it just screwed everybody. It protected the entire internet economy. No internet company could come to China. And now China is the leader in EV manufacturing, right? China makes more EVs. China sells more EVs than anybody, right? BYD was obviously leading the charge. Then companies like Xiaomi have also come in and started making cars, right? And they've screwed Europe and they've screwed America, and they're obviously screwing the Chinese home market because it's going all the way. So that's what the report says. Whisper it quietly, but beneath the buzz of shiny new car models and bright lights in Europe's largest car show, industry sector is worried that their party is over. Well, there shouldn't be any surprise. These people actually brought it upon themselves. Speaking of China, Vietnam's imports from China and exports to US have fallen in August. Shipments to US face 7% duties, while transshipments via Vietnam says 40% duties. So everybody thought that, Vietnam has started becoming a real manufacturing powerhouse, right? And after China, India has lost a lot of opportunities because Vietnam has taken everything. And people started blaming India, and then they figured out, it's just China rerouting its stuff to US, right? Using Vietnam as a vassal, as a, pitch stop, so to speak, if that's the good word. So that's what's happening. Hanoi government is aping a GDP growth of 8.3 to 8.5% this year. Exports to United States fell 2% in August from July. Customs data show. Yeah. Imports from China also fell 2%. So that's that. For the first 8 months of 2025, Vietnam shipment to United States rose 26% to $99 billion, and now it's going down. So that's very interesting. France has also had a political upheaval. Mr. Macron is out. Uh, Moving on. US jobs data revise, to sharply lower. People have figured out that US data is shit. So they basically don't have any data sanity. Their jobs data is just a lie. They figured out that the Democrat administration at the end of its term was just faking job numbers to make the economy look good, to get re-elected, and then blame Trump if when the real numbers came out for all the problems, right? Essentially, all that data was bullshit. That's what they've realized. On the contrary, you've got to thank, let's say, you've got to give credit or praise MOSPI, Ministry of Statistical Program and Implementation in India, for doing a very good job. So their data management has been much, much better than what US has turned out to be, which is a total shit show, a total lie, right? Speaking of a very interesting story, have you watched Succession? Has anybody watched Succession here? The TV show, the HBO production, Succession. Has anybody watched Succession, folks? Can anybody give me a cheer on Succession? Anybody? Nobody? Yes? No? Right? No answers? Come on. You can say no if you haven't. Okay, so Succession is a mini series, a proper 4-season series loosely based on the life of Mr. Rupert Murdoch. No, says Mr. Yogendra Pratap Singh. That's okay. That I'm giving you a brief of that. So Succession is based on the life of Mr. Rupert Murdoch, who's perhaps one of the most interesting characters of the world since the last 90 years, because Mr. Murdoch is 91, I guess, right? So he's 91 or 94. Just let me check. Rupert Murdoch age. He's probably 94. Rupert Murdoch age. 94. So Mr. Rupert Murdoch is one of the most interesting characters. He runs something called Fox News, the News Corp, right? These people are huge, the hot stars, the Star Group, essentially in Australia, the News Corp, the Fox News, everything is Murdoch Group, right? So these people are, he's a pioneer, he's a conservative media mogul, the answer to CNN and everybody. Fox News is the right-wing play in US. So he's just next level. So his succession, like what happens when he passes away eventually, was a very big, heated, conversation. So Mr. Rupert Murdoch, a very good book called Clash of the Titans against Rupert Murdoch and, his counterpart, who was the other group. I'm forgetting his name. The guy who got acquired by Microsoft. The MSN. Oh shit, I'm forgetting his name. But anyway, so Mr. Rupert Murdoch, Empire, very, very interesting story. Clash of the Titans, great book. His life story, extraordinary. So his kids, they were fighting for who's gonna take over the Fox Group empire. So Fox is also a very big shareholder, some 30% shareholder in Disney now. So it's a very huge, empire. And there was a huge drama going on as who's going to take over the Fox Group after Mr. Murdoch, right? So he has 4 children from his one of his wives. He has a lot of wives. He's probably going to get married. He was going to get married a couple of years ago at age 91 or something. Very interesting guy. But the point is that he is essentially given the reins to Lachlan Murdoch, right? So it's over. Succession is amongst the best shows, very high art value shows that have ever been made. You know, HBO Productions, one of the best HBO productions of all time, Succession. Now it's loosely based on the life of Murdoch's. Of course, you know, he got married last year at 93, I guess. Oh, Mr. Pratap, thank you so much. Yeah, so that's what I was remembering. So that's the guy, right? So he has taken, he's properly entrusted Lachlan Murdoch to take over Fox Group. So that particular drama has come to rest. So his other kids, the Prudence, Elizabeth, and everybody, James, James is no they were trying to get old, but he has sort of entrusted them, and all the other siblings are gonna get $1 billion a piece. So that drama is over. If you want to watch a drama, if you're fond of watching business related shows, Succession is one of the most respected shows. Now I don't like watching shows, but it was hyped a lot, so I ended up watching. And it turned out to be a very good show, man. Mr. Tiwari says, looks like family is big on entertainment. Did not miss milking their own story. They didn't milk the story, by the way. So they didn't do that. HBO did. And HBO essentially had a lot of investigative journalism to draw from their lives. So HBO did a lot of research, and they drew very interesting characters based on the characters that the story has. So Lachlan has like Kendall Roy, so they made it a Roy empire instead of the Murdoch empire, and they made it very conservative. So they drew a lot from his story, and then they dramatized it, fictionalized it a little bit, and some of it actually has some truth. A lot. Some of the stories actually match, but other than that, I don't think they've portrayed the Murdochs that favorably, at least Rupert Murdoch. So they're very grey there as well. They didn't just paint him as a villain, but they've being liberals, they didn't portray him that favorably, or let's say that fairly, I'll say, because of their political inclinations. And when their political inclinations or political predilections came forward, it just became clear that they hate the guy. But other than that, it's a pretty solid work of art. I call it a work of art. It's a piece, it's an art piece, and a very solid art piece. So 4 seasons, and then in that show, Mr. Mr. Logan Roy dies, right? And then that's when it happens. So of course, what it's called, life is stranger than fiction sometimes, right? So life is indeed stranger than fiction sometimes, especially when it comes to Rupert Murdoch. So let me just remember them, because I'll be very sad if I don't remember the name. Clash of the Titans. I had the book. I read the book years ago, probably 10 years ago. And who was his nemesis? Clash of the Titans book character. So one was, one second. I'm missing out on something. Clash of the Titans, how the unbridled Ted Turner Group. Yes, it was the Turner Group, right? They were in big competition, but they essentially sold out. The Turner Group is no longer an independent company. So that's that, ladies and gentlemen. We've come to the end of the 108th episode of Thinker's Frequency. I hope you enjoyed it. Our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. It's 9:16. We should punch in anytime soon. I wish you a beautiful day, personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Please take care, and cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining. Mr. Akhilesh Solomari says no, so you can watch. Mr. Engineer Deepak Gund says good morning, sir. Good morning, Mr. Deepak Gund. See you. Bye-bye.